There is a creature alive on this earth right now living in the cold water just offshore that has no spine, no lungs, no bones, and no face in any shape you would recognize. It has 3 hearts. It has blue blood. It has a brain, not in its head, but distributed across 8 arms, each one capable of tasting, touching, and deciding on its own, even when severed from the body. It can change the color and texture of its entire skin in less than a second, not to blend in, not just to hide. But perhaps, and this is the part scientists keep returning to in the quiet of their offices, then perhaps to dream. We have found in the last few years that octopuses flicker through color while they sleep. Pale, then dark, then blushing amber, then deep, deep gray, moving through what looks, unmistakably, like a dream. And we do not know what they dream of. We do not know what it feels like to be one. We barely understand what they are. What we do know, what biologists and neuroscientists keep quietly agreeing on, is that the octopus evolved intelligence entirely separately from us, not as our cousin, not as our distant ancestor, but as something that arrived at thought, at problem solving, at personality, from a completely different branch of life. They are the closest thing this planet has to an alien mind. And tonight, as you settle in, as your breathing slows, we are going to spend the next half hour following them into the deep, into the reef, into the cold, still dark where they wait in their dens and watch the world with eyes that see everything except the color of their own skin. Let the world outside grow quiet. You don't need to hold on to the day anymore. Just follow the water down. 500 million years ago, give or take, in the warm, shallow seas of the Cambrian period, something small and soft-bodied first appeared in the fossil record. It had a simple shell. It had a rudimentary nervous system. It was, in all probability, not particularly interesting. But it was the beginning. Over hundreds of millions of years, the ancestors of the modern octopus slowly gave up their shells. This is thought to be one of the great evolutionary wagers in animal history, abandoning the one armor they had in exchange for something harder to define: speed, flexibility, the ability to squeeze through any gap, hide in any crevice, reshape themselves to any space. And in giving up that shell, they may have been forced, generation by generation, to become smarter. Because when you have no armor and no school of fish to hide in and no venom fast enough to stop every predator, you have only one option left. You have to think. Today. And there are around 300 recognized species of octopus. They live in every ocean on Earth. In tidal pools just a few inches deep, and at the edge of hydrothermal vents miles beneath the surface. In the tropics, in the Arctic, on the seafloor, in open water. They are everywhere, and most people have never looked closely at one. The largest, and the giant Pacific octopus, can reach 9 meters from arm-tip to arm-tip and weigh over 50 kilograms. The smallest, the starsucker pygmy octopus, is barely larger than your thumbnail. All of them, in their own way, are strangers. When researchers first began studying octopus cognition in the mid-20th century, the assumption was simple. Invertebrates don't have intelligence in any meaningful sense. They are reflex machines, stimulus and response. Nothing more. It did not take long to find out how wrong that was. And in laboratory tanks, octopuses unscrewed jars to retrieve crabs inside. They recognized individual human faces, They played, genuinely played, investigating objects with no survival value, repeatedly, apparently for the pleasure of it. They planned escape routes from their tanks and executed them at night when the lights went off, returning to the water before morning. One aquarium in New Zealand spent months puzzling over why their sharks kept disappearing overnight. The answer, when they finally rigged a camera, this was an octopus, climbing out of its tank in the dark, crossing the floor, entering the shark tank, eating a shark, then returning home. This is not reflex, this is something else entirely. To understand the octopus, it helps to begin with the body, because the body is, in every way, wrong. Wrong, that is, by every principle of what we assume a complex animal should look like. There is no skeleton. The only truly hard structure in an octopus is a small, sharp beak, like a parrot's, hidden at the center of the 8 arms, where the body joins them. Everything else is soft. A mantle, which is the main body mass, sits behind the eyes and contains most of the organs. Inside, 3 hearts, 2 of which pump blood through the gills, 1 of which pumps blood through the rest of the body. That blood is blue. Not as a metaphor. Literally, as chemically blue, because octopuses use a copper-based molecule called hemocyanin to carry oxygen, rather than the iron-based hemoglobin that turns our own blood red. Hemocyanin is less efficient at warmer temperatures, which is one reason most octopuses prefer colder water. It is, however, remarkably good at delivering oxygen in low-oxygen environments. A useful property for a creature that spends time in crevices and dens with little circulation. The arms, 8 of them, never tentacles, never legs, or always arms, are each lined with suckers. A single large octopus may have over 2,000 suckers across its body. Each sucker is independently mobile, capable of rotating, gripping, tasting, and smelling simultaneously. The suckers do not simply stick, they analyze. An octopus, reaching into a dark crevice, is not just grabbing, it is reading the rocks chemically, assessing texture, temperature, and the faint molecular signatures of anything that has passed nearby. The arms themselves contain roughly 2/3 of the octopus's neurons, not connected to the central brain in the head, distributed throughout. Each arm has its own ganglia, its own local processing. This means an arm can act independently, can reach, explore, taste, and respond to what it finds, without waiting for instruction from the brain. Researchers have shown that severed octopus arms will continue to respond to stimuli for up to an hour. They will even attempt to pass food toward where the mouth used to be. This is a form of intelligence without a center, distributed, fluid, nothing, like the way our own minds work. And the skin. The skin is perhaps the most astonishing surface of any animal on Earth. Beneath the outer layer of an octopus's skin lie 3 types of cell working in concert. Chromatophores, which are pigment sacs that expand and contract to create color patterns, and iridophores, which reflect light at different wavelengths to produce iridescent blues, greens, and golds, and papillae, tiny muscular bumps that can rise and fall in milliseconds, completely transforming the texture of the skin from smooth glass to rough rock, from flat sand to jagged coral. In a single second, and an octopus can go from perfectly mirroring a sandy seafloor to replicating the mottled texture of encrusted rock. Not just visually, texturally. Run your hand over the skin and it would feel different. The paradox, of course, and it is a beautiful but strange paradox, is that octopuses are almost certainly colorblind. Their eyes contain only one type of photoreceptor. They should not be able to see the colors they so perfectly replicate. There are theories. Some researchers believe octopuses may perceive color through their skin itself, that the photoreceptors distributed across their body greater than create a kind of whole-skin vision, sensing light without seeing in any conventional sense. It is not proven. It is one of the many things we simply do not yet know. Let that sit for a moment as you rest. A creature that paints itself in colors it cannot see, dreaming in a palette it has never witnessed. In 2012, a gathering of neuroscientists issued what became known as the Cambridge Declaration on Consciousness. It stated, formally, that non-human animals, including all mammals, birds, and many other creatures, possess the neurological substrates that generate consciousness, that they are, in some meaningful sense, aware. Octopuses were specifically mentioned. This was not a casual observation. This was the scientific community quietly acknowledging something that had been building for decades in aquarium rooms and field studies and laboratory tanks. That consciousness, the thing we consider most uniquely our own, may not belong to us at all. But consciousness in an octopus, if it exists, would be nothing like ours. And this is what keeps philosophers and biologists returning to them, again and again, as the most fascinating problem in animal cognition. The philosopher Peter Godfrey Smith, who is also an experienced scuba diver, has spent years observing octopuses in the wild. In his book on cephalopod minds, he describes an octopus making eye contact with him underwater and the quality of that contact. Not the startled reflex of a fish, not the blank gaze of an invertebrate. Something else, an assessment, a consideration. Octopuses have personalities. This is not sentimental language. It is documented, measurable. Individual octopuses in research tanks show consistent differences in boldness, in curiosity, in how they approach novel objects. Some are explorers, some are cautious, some are aggressive, some are playful in ways that seem almost inexplicable in terms of pure survival. They have been documented sulking, recorded taking revenge. In one famous account from a Seattle aquarium, an octopus named Truman repeatedly squirted water at a particular volunteer he disliked, accurately, persistently, over multiple weeks, ignoring every other staff member. They use tools. They have been photographed carrying coconut shell halves across the sea floor to assemble into portable shelters later, carrying something they have no immediate use for, in anticipation of future need. This is planning. This is delayed. Us gratification. This is something we once thought belonged only to primates, and yet they are almost entirely solitary. They do not have the social structures that we have traditionally associated with intelligence. No pods, no packs, no teaching of young. Octopuses live alone, and most species die within a year or two. Many females dying soon after their eggs hatch, having spent their final weeks tending them without eating. They arrived at intelligence alone, without the social scaffolding of cooperation, without the generational transmission of knowledge. Each octopus learns the world as though from scratch. And somehow, they end up curious, playful, cautious, individual, aware. What does it feel like to be one? We genuinely do not know. There is no framework for it. We can barely imagine consciousness decentralized across 8 semi-independent arms. We cannot conceive of perceiving color with our skin. We have never experienced a form of knowing that is more touch than sight, more chemical than sonic. They are here on this planet now, in the water that runs alongside our coastlines, thinking in a language we do not yet have words for. In 2019, a researcher named Silvia Lima de Sousa Medeiros was watching an octopus sleep in a tank in Natal, Brazil, when something remarkable happened. The octopus, a young female, began to change color. Not as camouflage. There was nothing to camouflage against. She was resting, still in a shallow depression in the tank floor. But across her skin, our colors shifted. Pale, then dark. Pale, then dark. A ripple of deep gray, then a flush of amber, then rapid flickering, almost like a strobe across her mantle. The researchers filmed it. They watched it again. Again. It was, they concluded, entirely consistent with dreaming. Octopuses have sleep phases, periods of deep stillness interspersed with what appears to be active sleep, characterized by rapid chromatophore changes, arm movements, and altered breathing. These active sleep phases bear a structural resemblance to REM sleep in mammals, the phase in which humans dream. We cannot say with certainty what an octopus dreams of. We can observe the patterns in the skin and note, gently, that they look like the patterns of a hunting octopus. A flash to startle prey, a ripple across sand, a burst of dark as it captures something, the skin replaying, in sleep, but what the body did in waking. And something about that is unbearably poignant. A creature we barely understand, with a mind structured nothing like our own, lying in the dark at the bottom of a tank or wedged into a crevice in a coral reef, and dreaming. Running through its day in the private theater of its own skin. In the ocean right now, in the cold dark below the thermocline, octopuses are resting. In their dens, sometimes just the space beneath 2 flat rocks, sometimes a junkyard of shells and bottle caps and interesting debris they have collected around themselves like a nest. They curl their arms close and they go. Somewhere we cannot follow. Do they experience something? Is there something it is like to be an octopus dreaming? We sit with that question the way you sit with a beautiful thing you cannot quite name. Just the fact of it. Just the wonder. There is a reef in the Coral Sea, or east of Australia, that has no name on any map most people have ever seen. At night, when the divers have returned to their boats and the surface above is still, it comes alive in a different way. The parrotfish have encased themselves in bubbles of mucus, sleeping in slow suspension. The sea turtles have tucked themselves under ledges, resting with one eye open. The sharks are moving, unhurried, through the dark water between the outer walls of coral. And in the shallows, in the complex architecture of staghorn coral and brain coral, and the soft fans that move with the current, the octopuses have come out. They move differently at night, less cautious, more fluid. Arm in arm reaches around a corner ahead of the body, tasting the water. The body follows, reshaping itself through a gap you would not have thought possible. They flow like water through solid things. One pauses on an open patch of pale sand. For a moment, and the skin shifts to match it exactly, the precise off-white of a crushed coral, the faint shadow lines of small depressions. Then it moves on. It has somewhere to be. Some crack in the reef, some remembered depth, some arrangement of rocks that it has probably been navigating for months. You boss a territory small enough to know completely, large enough to never grow bored of. The water is very quiet here. Everything that lives in it has found its rhythm for the night. The reef breathes in slow currents, the polyps feeding, the fish dreaming, the octopus somewhere between the two, and half awake, half something else, moving through its world with 8 arms and 3 hearts and a mind we have barely begun to describe. You are resting now. Somewhere on the other side of the world, a small octopus has found its den for the night. It has arranged itself. Arms folded close, mantle rising and falling with slow, deliberate breath, in the dark crevice between 2 ancient pieces of reef. Soon, it will begin to dream. We will see it in the flicker of its skin, the pale and the amber and the sudden dark. Whatever it is that plays out in the private theater of that extraordinary mind. We do not know what it is like to be an octopus. We may never know. But we know this. Something is in there. Why, something watches the world and makes decisions about it. Something remembers and plans and prefers. Something, in the dark of the reef, is having a night. The ocean is very large. It is full of minds we have not met yet, full of forms of experience we have no words for. That is not a frightening thing. It is, well, when you sit with it, a beautiful one. You don't need to hold on to anything right now. The day is done. The world is doing what it does, turning, breathing, us dreaming in all its strange varieties. Let yourself go wherever sleep takes you. The reef will still be there in the morning. The octopus will still be in its den. And somewhere between you, in the dark, a thought too strange for language is quietly occurring. Good night.